The gentlelady from Guam.
Mr. Speaker, I move to suspend the rules and pass House Resolution 132.
The clerk will report the title of the resolution.
House Resolution 132, resolution honoring the life and memory of the Chiricahua Apache leader Goyathlay, or Goyathlay, also known as Geronimo, and recognizing the 100th anniversary of his death on February 17, 2009 as a time of reflection and the commencement of a healing for all Apache people.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentlewoman from Guam, Ms. Bordallo, and the gentleman from Utah, Mr. Bishop, each will control 20 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from Guam.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous material on the resolution under consideration.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentlelady is recognized.
House Resolution 132 honors the life and the memory of the great Apache leader known to many of us as Geronimo. Last week, February 17th, marked the 100th anniversary of his death. Geronimo began as a spiritual and intellectual leader of his people. Circumstance in the manner of attack by the armies of first Mexico and then the United States cultivated his keen military skill and determination. The story of Geronimo shows us some of the paradox that is the United States. We hunted this man as a perceived threat to the security of our young, developing nation in the West. When he surrendered, we broke promises and mistreated him, ensuring he would never see his homeland again. Yet, half a century later, our U.S. paratroopers used the name of Geronimo as a battle cry against our enemies in World War II. Using the name Geronimo was meant to instill fear in the enemy below that they were about to meet a soldier as fierce and as determined as the mighty Apache warrior. And now, a full century after the death of Geronimo, the United States House of Representatives stands to acknowledge the mistakes of our flawed, disruptive policies of the past and to honor this great man. With this resolution, we honor the life of the great Apache leader Geronimo, his skill, his bravery, and his incredible tenacity in defense of his homeland and his way of life. So I congratulate and thank our colleague, Mr. Grijalva of Arizona, for sponsoring this resolution, and I urge all of my colleagues to support the passage of House Resolution 132, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Utah.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
If today someone says the word Geronimo, it evokes thoughts of an icon of popular culture. It's unfortunate that in the reality of this Apache warrior's life and death, there is not more interest of the importance for him than simply the pop culture that was developed during World War II. It was, in fact, in 1940, the night before the first mass jump, that paratroopers at Fort Benning were watching a 1939 movie named, oddly enough, Geronimo, in which the actor playing this hero yells his name as he leaps from a cliff into a river. Thus was born the phrase that has become known to more people than the actual life of the Native American leader we call Geronimo. This resolution notes the treatment of Geronimo and the Apache people at the hands of both the Mexican and the U.S. governments, and it should serve as a lesson that government is often prone to error, incompetence, corruption, and that the larger government grows in size and power, the more pronounced and frequent these errors and misdeeds and mistakes indeed are made. It should make us shudder to think, in a matter of weeks, how this Congress has spent more than $1 trillion of borrowed money to grow the size and power of the federal government. Today, we see problems in this country, problems of poverty, problems of joblessness, hopefully not a massive increase in homelessness, but sometimes hopelessness, and that is a sure sign or a question. And the question is whether big government actually is helping to overcome those issues or is a hindrance to the people in their ability to overcome those particular issues. This resolution, I hope, will inspire fresh thinking about the direction of our government with respect to all American citizens, Native Americans and non-Native Americans alike. and hopefully will inspire us to consider the road we as a country are taking. And if it is indeed to acquire greater responsibility for individuals, or does it help with individuals being able to succeed on their own? That is the course, that is the question, and I think this resolution does move us in that direction to ask those kinds of pertinent questions that are important not just for this specific individuals, but pertinent for all of us. That I reserve the balance of my time.
Reserves his time. The gentlelady from from Guam.
Mr. Speaker, I yield to the gentleman from American Samoa, Mr. Falama-Vega, such time as he may consume.
The gentleman from American Samoa is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to extend and revise my remarks.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, I do want to commend the chairman of our Natural Resources Committee, Mr. Ray Hall, and the ranking member, Congressman Hastings, and especially my good friend, the chief sponsor of this legislation, the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Grijalva, and co-sponsor, Congressman Dale Kildee. And I know that our colleague Tom Cole would have loved to also have been the original co-sponsor of this bill. Congressman Cole from Oklahoma is the only Native American member of Congress that we have. He is a proud member of the Chickasaw Nation from the state of Oklahoma. Mr. Speaker, the name Geronimo evokes and brings to light other issues, and I think something that we ought to be reminded of in light of our government's relationships and our treatment of the Native Americans or American Indians. Geronimo, or as he was known when he was born, was Goyathlay or Goyathlay, and it means in the Chiricahua Apache language, it means one who yawns. Interestingly enough, Geronimo was born in 1829. And in 1851, a company of some 400 Mexican soldiers raided the Chiricahua campsite while Geronimo and his fellow warriors were out away from the camp. And as a result of this raid on their settlement, his wife, his children, and mother were killed. The Chiricahua Apache. And by the way, I wanted to note also, Mr. Chairman, that the place where Geronimo was born is now in Clifton, what is now known as the town of Clifton in Arizona. And I suspect this is probably the reason why my colleague from Arizona wanted to make sure that there is proper recognition for this great Chiricahua Apache chief. What was stated here in the history that having that his wife, his children, and his mother were killed by these soldiers, Mexican soldiers, the Chiricahua chief Mangos, Colorado, sent Geronimo to join Cochise's warriors to fight and seek vengeance against the Mexican army. In one of the many battles he fought, he repeatedly attacked Mexican soldiers with a knife, despite all the firing of the bullets that came in his way, and so much so that the Mexicans were praying then for their own safety to their patron saint, Saint Jerome, or in I suppose in Spanish is Geronimo, and this is how the name Geronimo started ever since. Just wanted to give a little sense of history of that. Mr. Speaker, Geronimo was a military leader. He conducted raids and settlements along the Mexican and U.S. borders. And in geographical terms, you're talking about areas that stretches from Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, and even what is now known as Mexico. Thousands of soldiers from both the U.S. and Mexican military forces tried to catch him for years and were unsuccessful in doing so. Some 10 years until finally Geronimo surrendered, only because I suspect of lack of food supplies and provisions and support for his little band of warriors and families. Geronimo was transferred to a military prison in Florida. And then it was at that time that the noted General Nelson Miles, who after years in trying to capture Geronimo, wrote in his journals a very interesting observation concerning this great Chiricahua warrior chief. And I quote from General Miles' journals. Everyone at Washington had now become convinced that there was no good in this old chief, and he was in fact one of the lowest and most cruel of the savages of the American continent. End of quote. That's not a very positive descriptive, I must say, of how people in those days described Native Americans. And then another part of General Miles' journal, he said, and I quote, he was one, and this is him referring to Geronimo again, he was one of the brightest, most resolute, determined-looking men that I have ever encountered. He had the clearest, sharpest dark eye I have ever seen, unless it was that of General Sherman. Mr. Speaker, Geronimo was eventually transferred to a military prison at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, where he died in 17 February 1909, and that's the premise of this resolution in celebrating the 100th anniversary when this great Indian warrior chief passed away in 17 April 1909. The resolution before us, Mr.